As the final arguments were about to clinch the case that would define my career, my own wife took her place at the defense table, standing shoulder to shoulder with her young protégé. The confidential corporate data that should have been locked in my home safe was now in her hands. The very key the defense needed to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. When the court recessed, I watched her walk away, laughing and chatting with the opposing counsel, without so much as a glance in my direction. Losing this bet-the-firm case meant the end of my career and a mountain of compensatory debt I couldn't pay off in 10 lifetimes. Then my wife called. She told me to just concede at the next hearing. It was her protégé's first big case since graduation, she said. She wanted him to start his career with a win. After 3 years of grinding, we were finally on the verge of victory in a massive corporate lawsuit. The defense had played their last card, and I was ready to deliver the final blow, a piece of evidence that would seal their fate. My heart pounded with excitement. I knew the law inside and out. I could see the finish line. But then, the rookie lawyer at the opposing table, who had been silent for most of the trial, raised his hand. "Your Honor, the defense calls a new witness." With the judge's permission, my wife, Chloe, strode into the courtroom. Dressed in a sharp business suit, her makeup subtle but flawless, she sat down in the witness box for the defense. "Leo," she said, her voice cloyingly sweet. It was a tone I'd never heard her use for me. So, the new kid at the defense table was her protégé from her old firm. Leo Vance, I think his name was. I'd heard Chloe mention him on the phone. Leo shot a look in my direction, a look that wasn't subtle at all. It was pure provocation. My God, she's being used, I thought. She's always been so naive, such a fool. Chloe then produced a file containing our client's internal business data. I knew, with sickening certainty, that the original document was locked in the safe in my home office. Only 2 people had the combination, me and her. In that instant, my mind went completely blank. After hearing Chloe's testimony, the judge called for a recess to review the new evidence. The faces of my legal team and our client's corporate counsel were grim. We were back to square one. All our sleepless nights, the endless work, it had all become a joke. The company's CEO, a man who had clawed his way up from the streets, tilted his head slightly. A couple of his guys in black suits started walking toward Chloe. I knew exactly what they were planning. Despite being a bookish 5'10" lawyer, I stepped in front of these 2 6'4" bruisers. "If you don't want to end up in a holding cell, you'll back off," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You have a problem, you take it up with me." Even after she had just driven a knife into my back, my first instinct was to protect her. I was left standing there, helpless, as I watched Chloe and Leo Vance walk away, shoulder to shoulder, laughing. She never once looked back. I had a pretty good idea of what was coming next. I had protected the woman who just betrayed me, and the price was a brutal beating in a courthouse parking garage. Lying on the cold concrete, I felt half dead. The CEO crouched down beside me, his voice a low growl. He promised to throw me in the East River if I lost this case. The company's 50-something president followed up with a kick to my head. Then darkness. If that had been the end of it, I might have welcomed a few more kicks. But it was just the beginning. The reputation, the credibility, the network I'd spent over a decade building in the legal community, all of it vanished the moment Chloe took the stand. Overnight, the law firm I had poured 10 years of my life into went bankrupt. If the client decided to sue me for malpractice and breach of contract, I'd be saddled with a debt so colossal I could work 10 lifetimes and never pay it off. At that point, death would be the only way out. I was already the laughingstock of the New York legal world. But it's not her fault, I told myself. Chloe is just a sweet, simple-minded fool. She was just having a moment of misguided compassion. How could I possibly blame her? I dragged myself to the ER to get patched up. The doctor, seeing the extent of the beating, suggested a full workup. Internal injuries from that kind of assault were common. My organs were fine, no internal bleeding, but they did find something else. The report they handed me read, stage 4 stomach cancer. I was going to die. The insane, non-stop work I'd put in for the last 3 years on this one case had utterly destroyed my body. But for some reason, the news brought a strange sense of relief. A draft of a lawsuit and a WhatsApp message hit my phone at the same time. The lawsuit was from the client. The message was clear. If I didn't win the case, they would sue me for corporate espionage. have my law license revoked, and I'd be on the hook for $2 billion indemnity. $2 billion. Might as well be monopoly money. If they wanted it, they could come find me in hell. The WhatsApp message was from my best friend. He said he'd just seen Chloe and Leo Vance at a karaoke bar in Koreatown. Suddenly, Chloe was the only person I wanted to see. I rushed over. As I was about to push open the door to their private room, I saw them through the glass panel. They were gazing into each other's eyes, singing a duet. Leo was wearing a cheap birthday crown, holding Chloe's hand as they swayed to the music. Because of her, my career was over. Because of her, I was a pariah. Because of her, I felt like I'd aged a decade in a few hours. And here she was, whispering sweet nothings with her little protégé. For the first time, a white-hot rage washed over me. I kicked the door open. We're done. I want a divorce. A splash of cold wine hit my face. Her husband, had just confronted her about being intimately close with another man, and her response was to throw her drink at me and threaten divorce. Why? I demanded, my heart shattering. Can you just be mature for once? Why are you so emotionally unstable? She shot back. Could you not cause a scene at Leo's birthday party? Seriously, get a grip on yourself, and you'd better apologize to him right now. I stared at her for a long moment, and then a bitter laugh escaped my lips. This was the woman I had loved for so many years. Because of her, a decade of hard-earned professional credibility had crumbled in an instant. My reputation. What reputation? I hadn't dared to even glance at Twitter or LinkedIn since the hearing. I knew my name, Ethan Hayes, was trending for all the wrong reasons. I imagined the comments were the same kind reserved for celebrities caught in cheating scandals. I was getting the same treatment, and I knew worse was coming. A tsunami of consequences was heading right for me. Yet the woman I had cherished for a decade, the woman who had just destroyed me, stood there without a shred of remorse, having just doused me with cheap Chardonnay. The greatest sorrow is a dead heart. In that moment, I think I became a walking corpse. "Oh, right," she said, as if suddenly remembering something after Leo tugged at her sleeve. "Ethan, if you don't want a divorce, that's fine." She paused, a smirk playing on her lips. "But you have to throw the case. For Leo. You know how tough it is in this business, especially for lawyers fresh out of school. They get put through so much," she continued. "If my protégé can win this case, he'll be made. It will launch his career. Hey, are you listening to me? Or do you actually want a divorce?" she threatened, her tone imperious. I fought back the metallic taste of blood in my throat and, dragging my bruised and broken body, turned to leave. "Ethan, what is that supposed to mean?" Chloe shrieked and used to being ignored. "Hey, what kind of man are you?" Her white knight finally stepped up. Leo Vance grabbed my arm. "I invited Chloe to my birthday party. That's it. Dude, it's 2025, not 1955. Are you so controlling she can't even celebrate a friend's birthday?" "Don't hold him back." Chloe's voice was empowered by Leo's support. "Let him go. Let's see how fast he comes crawling back to me like a dog when he sobers up." "You're a relic, such a chauvinist," she yelled after me. "Ethan, if you dare win that case, you can just wait for the divorce papers." I let out a cold, desolate laugh. "Chloe, are you that clueless?" My voice was like ice. "How does a rookie lawyer, fresh out of school, have the nerve to take on a case this big? And you're a shark when it comes to divorce law, but have you ever even touched a corporate case? Why do you think he came to you first? He wasn't interested in your value as a lawyer. He was interested in you because you're my wife. This disgusting parasite knew from the beginning he could never beat me in a fair fight. Stealing corporate secrets was his only way to win. And you, Chloe, you were nothing but the knife in his hand. You're full of it." Leo's pretty boy face turned beet red. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore. I just gave Leo a final, chilling look. "You think you can hide behind this woman, and I'll just let it go? This was supposed to be a professional matter. Winning or losing a case like this barely affects us lawyers in the long run. But now you're involved in corporate espionage and fabricating evidence. From this moment on, you are my enemy." I pushed his hand off my arm. "Your career is over." Leo's confident expression dissolved into panic. He stood there, frozen like a statue. When it came to seducing naive women, I had to admit he was out of my league. But as a lawyer, he was nothing. I had almost reached the end of the hallway when I heard him screaming behind me. "Ethan, cut the crap. You're just trying to slander me because Chloe helped me out? You're a disgrace to the legal profession. You're human garbage. Yeah, right? I was just making empty threats. I no longer had the strength to see this case through. As I stepped out of the karaoke bar, I doubled over and vomited blood. The last thing I remembered was a stranger calling 911. My assistant was frantically calling Chloe's phone, but it just kept going to voicemail. My soul felt detached, watching the scene unfold like a bystander. I was a kid from a blue-collar family in Ohio who fought his way to the top. The first time I saw Chloe at Columbia Law, she became my life's ambition. She was a New Yorker, born and bred. To have a chance with her, I took every internship, every opportunity, desperate to make a name for myself. When we graduated, I finally worked up the courage to ask her to start a law firm with me. It was the only way I could imagine staying close to her. She agreed without a second thought. For her, it was just for fun. For the next 3 years, I worked around the clock, taking cases, meeting clients, networking. The once healthy kid from the Midwest developed a severe stomach condition. I spent countless nights curled up in bed, writhing in pain. Finally, 5 years ago, I won an impossible case against a legal legend. I made a name for myself overnight. That same year, Chloe finally said yes. It was the 5th time I had proposed. After we got married, she lost what little interest she had in law and decided she wanted to be in a band. To support her dream, I worked even harder, taking on more cases, making more money. For a decade, the only hot meals I ate were at client dinners. Chloe never once cooked for me. Early-stage gastrocarcinoma. The doctor said it was a 1 in a million catch. The symptoms at this stage were virtually non-existent, and there was a high chance of reversing it. But cancer was still cancer. I was probably going to die soon. What a cursed life. But facing death, a desperate desire to live surged within me. At the very least, I couldn't die in disgrace. I had to settle my accounts, repay my debts, and get my revenge. The doctor's advice was simple: regular sleep, healthy diet. That was the first moment of genuine happiness I'd felt since the trial began. I turned on my phone, and a flood of messages appeared. More than half were from Chloe, berating me. Ethan, are you even a man? Are you going to let your wife starve because you're having a tantrum? Ethan, the band needs to get paid. Send me the money. You asshole, don't push your luck. I started laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. Ethan, oh Ethan, I thought. What kind of woman have you been destroying your body for all these years? When you're dead, she won't even have time to visit your grave. She'll just be complaining that her workhorse is gone. I opened Instagram. Chloe's latest post was a series of photos of her and Leo fronting her band on an outdoor stage. The caption read, "Away from toxic men, living my best life." Yeah, I was a toxic man, wasn't I? The toxic man who took care of you for 10 years. The toxic man who destroyed his own health so you could live your carefree, fabulous life. The toxic man who shouldered all of your burdens. I sat on a bench on the street, the city traffic roaring around me, and answered a call. I said, my voice cold as steel. Let's proceed as planned. The trial reconvened 10 days later. Chloe was once again seated at the defense table. Even under a thick layer of makeup, I could see the dark circles and bloodshot eyes. She was still hungover. I had deliberately scheduled the hearing for today. Yesterday was her birthday. Every year, she threw a massive party, and every year, she forgot that the next day was mine. In 10 years, I'd never once celebrated my own birthday, never once heard her say the words happy birthday, but none of that mattered anymore. Compared to Chloe, Leo Vance looked sharp and alert, his eyes burning with ambition. He was ready to make his name by trampling on a veteran's reputation. What a guy. I'd heard he'd been acting insufferably arrogant at his firm lately. Just as the judge called the court to order, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. It was a picture, a grainy shot from a hotel room, 2 people tangled in the sheets. A sharp pain lanced through my stomach. I looked up and met Leo's gaze. His eyes were full of pride. He already saw himself as the victor. You've been making all the moves so far, but I haven't even started to play my hand. We both clawed our way up in this world. What makes you think I wouldn't have a contingency plan? I had no idea where the defense got their evidence. Good lawyers are good actors. So I pretended to be caught completely off guard as my assistant handed me a manila envelope. Your Honor, after consulting with my client, we have decided to submit the original version of the document in question for the court's verification. After a 20-minute recess, the court announced that the authenticity of the evidence Chloe had provided was now in question. Chloe, still foggy from her hangover, looked confused. Leo shot to his feet. How could it be in question? That document came from your house. You wouldn't keep a fake version at home, would you? I'm sorry, what did you say? I asked, my voice dripping with icy sarcasm. Leo quickly backpedaled. What I mean is, 10 days is more than enough time for the plaintiff to forge a new set of data. I questioned the authenticity of their document. The kid was green, so green. With that one sentence, he wasn't just questioning me. He was questioning the court, the judge. His words were a direct challenge to the court's integrity. He was digging his own grave. Objection sustained on the prior statement. Your current line of questioning is baseless speculation, the judge said, his voice cold as he brought down the gavel. Your motion to reconsider is denied. The court recessed again. If the defense couldn't produce new, credible evidence by the next session, they were going to lose. I walked out of the courthouse with my client's CEO, laughing and talking. Chloe, who had finally sobered up, rushed after us with Leo in tow. Ethan, stop right there, she yelled, as entitled as ever. So you keep fake documents at home? You were setting a trap for me. You said you loved me. She screamed, her voice cracking with rage. But you never trusted me. Not for a second. Leo chimed in from the side. This guy is unbelievable. They say you get what you give, but this guy's heart must have been eaten by a dog. Before I could even respond, the CEO had heard enough. What the hell kind of garbage is coming out of your mouths? He bellowed. You screw over your own husband of 10 years to help your pretty boy lover, and now you have the nerve to play the victim? Unbelievable. He then pointed a thick finger at Leo. And you call yourself a man, hiding behind a woman's skirt. What are you, a coward? Get lost, both of you. In the face of a man with that much power, the two of them didn't dare say another word. Do you remember my mentor, David Carter? I said calmly. He left the profession because confidential files from his home safe were stolen, causing him to lose a major case. It was David who had warned me before he retired. From now on, he said, keep 2 copies of every sensitive document for every case. One real, one fake, in 2 separate places. He told me not to make the same mistake he did. I was never setting a trap for you, Chloe. I never even imagined I'd have to. I continued. In fact, I told you about this method once. But you were too busy with your band. When did you ever really care about what happens in the legal world? The divorce papers are ready. You have 3 days to sign them. If you don't, I'll file. That was the last thing I said before leaving them standing there and getting into the car with the CEO. In the rearview mirror, I saw Leo slap Chloe across the face. They erupted into a furious argument, their screaming turning into a physical fight. The CEO asked if I wanted him to stop the car. I knew what he meant. I just smiled and shook my head. It didn't matter anymore. My time was too precious to waste on them. I hadn't been home in over a month. My nights were spent either on the office couch or in the back of a car on some business trip, listening to the wind howl. When I pushed open the front door, the apartment looked like a war zone. Half-deflated balloons were tangled in streamers hanging over the sofa. A bottle of champagne had been sprayed across the once pristine white walls. The home I had worked for 10 years to afford had become a free crash pad for Chloe and her flock of hangers-on. Whenever they wanted a party, they'd descend on the place, leave a trail of destruction, and then scatter after sleeping off their hangovers. And I, like some kind of butler, would be the one to call the cleaning service. I leaned against the arm of the sofa and called my assistant. I gave him 3 instructions. First, hire a contractor. I want the entire place gutted and remodeled. New furniture, new appliances, new layout. Everything. Second, call a cleaning service. I want every single thing in this apartment that belongs to a woman packed into boxes and left on the curb. Third, change the front door lock to a fingerprint scanner. Program my fingerprint only. No one else gets in. After making the call, I packed a few sets of clothes, a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and planned to check into a hotel for a few days. Looking in the mirror, I saw a faint glimmer of the guy I used to be. It had been almost a decade since I'd worn anything so casual. I booked a suite at a resort hotel by the ocean, ready to enjoy a 3-day vacation. A vacation I was giving myself. But before it could even begin, my phone rang. Ethan, what the hell do you think you're doing? It was Chloe, her voice as demanding as ever. Why are you suddenly remodeling the apartment? You didn't even tell me. Where are my friends and I supposed to have our party now? And what's with the fingerprint lock? The contractor wouldn't even let me in. I gave the order, I said flatly. Ethan, are you trying to piss me off? Chloe, get a grip. That is my house, not yours. Isn't it normal for a girl to be a little impulsive? Don't you have any class as a man? You need to come back here right now. If you ruin my party, you can forget about ever getting me back. She went on and on, listing all my supposed faults. I had no patience left to listen. I turned my phone off and headed for the beach. I enjoyed 2 full days of peace. Then, a pounding on my hotel room door woke me up. Chloe stood there, fuming, with a couple of awkward-looking hotel staff behind her. How dare you not answer my calls? She seethed. Leo dared to hit you, I retorted. Ethan. Chloe's face was contorted with rage. You've changed. When did you become so cruel? Forget it. You're a lost cause. I can't even be bothered to argue with you. Realizing she was losing this line of argument, she changed the subject. What gives you the right to change the locks and throw all my things out? You know I was in a bad mood, and I wanted to have a party with my friends. But no, you had to go and humiliate me in front of everyone. A lost cause. She was right about that. I'm a lost cause, aren't I? I said, the double meaning hanging in the air. I had no intention of telling her about my diagnosis. That would only make her refuse the divorce. If she could just wait until I died, she would inherit everything. It's my house that I bought with my money. Why can't I change the locks? I asked. You feel humiliated because you couldn't get in. What about me? In a courtroom, in front of everyone, my wife stood with the opposition and stabbed me in the back. We're both lawyers, Chloe. Did you have any idea what that case meant for me? I'm a joke in the legal community. My entire future is ruined. And where were you? Celebrating a birthday with your boy toy. The hotel staff, who had been expecting a simple domestic dispute, changed their expressions. Their looks turned to cold judgment directed at my wife. I even heard one of them mutter, I can't believe some women are so shameless. The world is full of scumbags. Chloe's face flushed crimson. She glared viciously in the direction of the whispers. Even if I did something wrong, can't you just be the bigger person? Slam. I slammed the door at her face. She and her bigger person could go to hell. I didn't even have the energy to fight with her anymore. I picked up the room phone and called the front desk. This person is disturbing my stay. Get her out of here. And then, finally, the world was quiet again. The quiet lasted less than a day. Hey man, old college reunion dinner tomorrow night. The old spot near campus. Be there. The text was from my college best friend. A wave of nostalgia washed over me. Fine, I thought. One last goodbye to the world. I showed up on time, but wasn't my old roommates waiting for me? It was Chloe. She was sitting in a booth at the Greasy Spoon Diner, wearing a plaid shirt and jeans, her hair in a high ponytail. She looked fresh, bright, just like she did back when we were poor college kids on a date. She waved at me, a mirror image of the past. For a second, I was disoriented. I sat down across from her, almost on autopilot. I wanted to see you, she said softly. I asked David to set it up. Why here? Because this is where it all began. Chloe fiddled with an empty water glass, her head bowed low, just like she used to. A sharp pain went through me. I hated this woman, hated her with every fiber of my being, but a part of me was softening. My time was running out. Revenge, torment. What was the point? I just wanted to live out what little time I'd left in peace, not waste it on meaningless drama. Chloe, let's just get a divorce, I said calmly. Let's part on good terms. She was silent for a long time. Fine, she finally said, but you have to have one last meal with me, just like the old days. I agreed with a nod, saying nothing more. Chloe ordered a feast, all my old favorites for college. So she did remember. She just couldn't be bothered to care. We both drank a little too much, reminiscing about college. The mood lightened. For a moment, I even blamed myself. Maybe she was just a thoughtless girl who got manipulated by a few sweet words. She was impulsive and spoiled, but wasn't that partly my fault for enabling her? And yes, she was close with Leo, but I had no concrete proof she had actually cheated, did I? The alcohol muddled my thoughts. Around 10, the diner started emptying out. The campus had a 10:30 p.m. curfew for the dorms. Chloe, tipsy, stood up to go to the restroom and asked me to hold her purse. I was a little drunk myself, and, out of habit, walked her to the restroom door before heading back to pay the bill. "You got 50 cents? If not, don't worry about it," the owner said. I didn't have any change, so I opened Chloe's purse to look. A folded-up document inside looked familiar. I unfolded it and my blood ran cold. It was the diagnostic report the hospital had mailed me. It detailed my early-stage stomach cancer diagnosis and urged me to come in for a follow-up. "Is that why you're here?" I thought. Did knowing I was sick finally make you remember our past? This woman, spoiled and impulsive, yes, but maybe she did have a soft, sentimental heart after all. My eyes welled up. Memories of our good times, our shared laughter, flooded my mind. I felt a surge of life, of hope. I continued to dig for a 50-cent coin. The next thing I saw shattered every illusion I had just built. A pregnancy test. 2 pink lines stared up at me, like bloody gashes carved into my heart. Whoever the father was, it wasn't me. For the past 2 months, I had been living at the office, consumed by the case. To hell with sentiment. So this was the real reason for tonight. She was just trying to keep me calm, to string me along. As soon as I was dead, she could inherit everything. After all, as a lawyer herself, dealing with my blue-collar parents from Ohio would be child's play. As long as we were still legally married when I died, she held all the cards. I knew all too well the dirty tricks some people in our profession were capable of. I let out a bitter laugh. Just moments ago, I was wondering if I was being too paranoid, if I had wronged her. I slapped myself hard across the face twice. The diner owner stared at me, dumbfounded. Whoa, hey buddy, it's just 50 cents. Forget it, it's on the house. You don't have to do that." I tossed Chloe's purse onto the counter and stumbled out into the night. The cool air started to clear my head. I walked aimlessly, my mind a complete blank, until I bumped into someone. "Hey, what's your problem?" The face was vaguely familiar. A woman about my age. "Ethan Hayes?" she asked uncertainly. "And you are?" A sudden, sharp pain twisted in my stomach, and I grimaced. "Ethan, are you okay?" The woman grabbed my arm to steady me. Her name was Sarah Jenkins, a fellow alum from Columbia. She had briefly dated my best friend, David, back in the day. Sarah helped me over to a bench by the university's soccer field. "Being a top lawyer is glamorous, but you have to take care of yourself," she said gently. I just managed a weak smile, not wanting to share my diagnosis with a near stranger. "About Chloe," Sarah began, but she was cut off by a high-pitched voice. "Honey," it was Chloe, her voice sickly sweet. I didn't turn around. The sound of her voice made me sick. "Why did you just walk off?" she asked, the smell of alcohol on her breath as she approached. "I'm dying, Chloe," I said, deciding it was time to lay all the cards on the table. "And whether we get divorced or not, my will specifies that my entire estate goes to my parents. You won't get a single dime." That one sentence destroyed her fantasy. In the moonlight, her face twisted into a demonic snarl. "Is that so?" Chloe's eyes darted to Sarah, who was sitting beside me. "Chloe," Sarah started. Slap. A sharp crack echoed in the night as Chloe struck Sarah across the face. "So this is it, Ethan," she shrieked. "You're cheating on me. I catch you in the middle of the night with your mistress." "No, it's not like that." Sarah was stunned, stammering a defense. "Chloe, what the hell do you want? A smear campaign? How pathetic." This was a tactic fit for reality TV, not for me. As a lawyer, I'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Just tell me, what do you want?" Chloe's smile was cruel. "I want 90% of your assets." How generous of her. At least she was leaving my parents something to retire on. "And if I say no, do you think you have a choice?" She tugged at her own hair, messing it up, then slapped her own face several times, leaving red marks on her cheeks. Quick, they're over here." A group of people came running. It was Leo, leading a pack of reporters. "Mistress attacks pregnant wife," he yelled. What spectacle. I watched coldly as the drama they had directed unfolded. "Chloe, are you okay?" "I'm so sorry," Leo said, rushing to her side, fussing over her hair. The reporters swarmed us, camera flashes blinding me. "Mr. Hayes, as a prominent attorney, do you have any comment on this scandal?" The question told me everything I needed to know. Leo had hired them to destroy me. No matter what I said, they would twist it to make me look like the villain. A crowd of students, drawn by the commotion, began to gather. Thinking he had won, Leo grabbed me by the collar. "Ethan, are you even human? Chloe's pregnant. for God's sake. The final blow. The baby wouldn't be born for another 7 or 8 months. I would likely be dead before she gave birth, before I could ever demand a paternity test. Chloe and the child would become the sole heirs to my estate. A brilliant plan, truly brilliant. They were betting on me dying within 7 months. The woman I had taken care of for 10 years was now desperately hoping for my swift death. I let Leo shake me. Sarah, seeing the confrontation escalate, tried to intervene. Chloe slapped her again hard. The crowd roared with approval. The righteous wife punishing the mistress. It was a tale as old as time, and the public always ate it up, especially when the wife was pregnant. Suddenly, I started laughing. A wild, unhinged laugh that silenced the entire crowd. I pulled a cigarette from my pocket. I rarely smoked, only when I was exhausted and needed a jolt. But right now, I needed one. I didn't care if it killed me. I sat down on the stone steps, looking at the young, eager faces in the crowd. They looked just like Chloe and I did all those years ago. I pointed at Chloe. This woman is my wife, or my soon-to-be ex-wife. We both went to this school. We were students here just like you. I met your Chloe, your fellow alum, right after she had gone through a nasty breakup. It was a classic story. Rich guy dumps the girl from the wrong side of the tracks. She was a campus pariah, completely broken. That's when we got together. Actually, I first saw her at freshman orientation. Long hair, white dress, walking beside a handsome upperclassman. From that day on, she was the goddess in my heart. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. God, I was so blind. From that day until this one, I've basically lived on instant noodles and coffee. Every cent I earned, from summer jobs in college to multi-million-dollar cases after graduation, I spent on my goddess. Give me a break. If you loved her so much, why would you cheat? A girl in the crowd called out angrily. Yeah, stop trying to play the victim, you cheater. Seeing the tide of public opinion in her favor, Chloe started to cry. He's not well, she sobbed, and he's the father of my child. Please, don't attack him. I never realized what a master of manipulation she was. The more pitiful she acted, the more the crowd turned on me. The righteous anger of the students was a deafening roar. But what did I have to fear? I was a dead man walking. What storm could possibly scare me now? I calmly met the gaze of every person in the crowd. When they finally quieted down, I spoke again, my voice low and steady. 10 years. For 10 years, I've lived and breathed the law. Cheating. I gave a bitter smile. I barely had time to sleep. For a decade, I was a law machine. And machines don't have the energy to cheat. My wife, on the other hand, I looked at Chloe, who was still putting on her show. In those 10 years, how many cases has she actually argued? And how many of those did she win without my help behind the scenes? Her extracurriculars, however, were quite extensive. Starting a band, throwing parties, clubbing, living in a perpetual state of hangover. She even stole confidential corporate secrets to help her boy-toy protégé, nearly destroying my life and career. And now, she's pregnant with another man's child. The crowd went dead silent. You're lying. Chloe and Leo screamed in unison. I ignored them. Chloe, have we even seen each other in the last 2 months? You live in such a drunken haze. You probably don't even remember where you were yesterday. But my life is an open book. A simple check of my schedule, my phone records, my credit card statements would make everything crystal clear. The color drained from their faces. As lawyers, they knew exactly what that meant. An investigation would expose their entire sordid affair. They tried to slip away. Excuse me, I called out to them. You too incited a public mob. You slandered me, and you have caused me immeasurable reputational and emotional damage. I'll see you in court. Ethan. Chloe was furious. When did you become so vindictive and unforgiving? This is why I fell out of love with you. You're too cruel. If you want me back, you need to learn to be a bigger person. Go screw yourself and your bigger person, someone from the crowd yelled. The whole place erupted in laughter. I laughed too, a genuine, liberating laugh. I've been playing the respectable gentleman for too long. I've forgotten how good it felt to just be human. I'll see you both in court, I said one last time, then turned and walked away. Sarah glanced at Chloe and Leo. You are such a fool, Chloe, she said, before hurrying to catch up and help support me as we left. The apartment was renovated, and I moved back in. I handed off most of my work at the firm, including the divorce proceedings against Chloe, to my partner. Chloe showed up a few times, screaming outside, but the fingerprint lock kept her out. Then Sarah entered my life. She confessed she'd had a crush on me for years, but never said anything because of how in love I seemed with Chloe. Now, she said, fate had given her a second chance. From that night on, she was a constant presence, shuttling between my home and the office, taking care of me. I told her about the cancer, that I didn't have much time left. She broke down and cried for hours. But the next day, she was back at my door just as before. She said she just wanted to be with me for as long as it took. I didn't push her away. I knew it wasn't love, not for me. Staring death in the face, I realized most people don't know what they truly want. And even if they do, very few have the courage to pursue it. My time was short, too short to fall in love again. But I had no right to stop her from resolving a regret from her youth. So, I hired her as my personal assistant of the firm. People started calling her the boss's wife. I paid no mind. The scandal at the university exploded online. My life, Chloe's, and Leo's were dissected by internet sleuths. It was amazing what they could piece together from digital breadcrumbs. My work-life trajectory was so predictable it was almost sad. Office, courthouse, police station, repeat. Chloe's digital footprint, however, was a tour of every nightclub and bar in the city. And for the past 2 months, her location data overlapped almost perfectly with Leo's, with pins dropped at several luxury hotels. Under immense public pressure, Chloe finally agreed to the divorce. Her one condition was that I drop the lawsuit against her and Leo. I just wanted them out of my life, so I signed the agreement. On the day the divorce was finalized, Chloe insisted on having one last dinner with me. I thought about it, then agreed. She told me she had never loved me. She liked men who were fun and could give her a life of luxury. I had been poor, earnest, and boring. I asked her why she married me if she didn't love me. She said she hated feeling like a nobody after her rich boyfriend dumped her. She needed to find a man who would worship her, to prove to all the people who had sneered at her that she was born to be a princess, destined to be adored. And I, in her eyes, was just one of many options to serve that purpose. I was a tool to rebuild her social standing. That night, I collapsed and was rushed to the hospital by 911 crew. All this time, I thought we had at least loved each other once. But from the very beginning, I was just an accessory for this woman's ego. A doormat she never once valued. What was the point of my 10 years of struggle? What was the point of working myself to the brink of death? My entire life, my entire love story had been a pathetic joke. Lying in the ICU, I felt a complete sense of despair. But then, a ray of light broke through the darkness. Sarah burst into the room, hysterical, crying at my bedside, telling me how for years she had followed every piece of news about me, always hoping. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for my life. 15, I pulled through. I wasn't going to die. Not yet. When I woke up in the hospital room, sunlight was streaming in, illuminating Sarah's face. She looked beautiful. My weak hands reached up and wrapped around her neck, pulling her close. I finally accepted her into my life. After another 2 weeks of recovery, the hospital wanted to run more tests. I refused. I wasn't going to waste what little time I had left in a hospital. Sarah couldn't change my mind, so she began packing my things. A doctor came in, his face half hidden by a mask. The patient's condition is deteriorating faster than we anticipated, he said gravely. He might have less than 6 months. Sarah burst into tears. I, on the other hand, had already made my peace with death. I checked out of the hospital. Over the next 2 months, Sarah and I traveled. We saw mountains, forests, great rivers, all the things I never had time for in my first 10 years of work and wouldn't have time for in the years to come. We crammed a lifetime of seeing the world into those 2 months. My spirits were high, but my body was failing. Most days, I was confined to a bed or a wheelchair. I had delegated almost everything to Sarah, both personal and professional. But there was one last thing I had to handle myself. In mid-August, the corporate case against Leo Vance resumed. Sarah pushed me into the courthouse in a wheelchair. At the defense table sat Leo and Chloe. Chloe, touching up her makeup, shot me a sideways glance, as if looking at a dead man. "You're dying," her look said, "so I'm going to win." Leo was even more brazen, mouthing the word cripple at me. I quickly figured out their strategy: delay. All they had to do was drag out the proceedings until I died. With 3 hearings a week, each lasting over 3 hours. My body was pushed to its absolute limit. "If you keep this up, you won't last another month," my new, private in-home doctor told me bluntly. Sarah cried, begging me to stop going to court. "It's just a case, Ethan. Are you really going to die for it?" It was the first time she had ever raised her voice at me. "But I can't let them win," I gasped from behind my oxygen mask. "Then let me go for you," she said, her expression suddenly firm. I thought for a long time, then finally agreed to let Sarah take over as lead counsel. The night before the next hearing, I told her, "I'm craving some homemade chicken parmesan. I'll order some for you," she said, pulling out her phone. I placed my hand over hers. "No, I want you to make it. It might be my last." "Don't say that," she cut me off. Sarah left quietly, leaving me alone in my wheelchair, lost in thought. "It's almost over," I thought. 16 the next morning, I promised Sarai would stay home. But the moment she left, my doctor, dressed in his white coat, wheeled me out the door and straight to the courthouse. In the courtroom, Sarah was brilliant. She hadn't practiced law in years, but her skills from her college debate team championship were still sharp. Unfortunately, Leo was better. Every piece of evidence he presented perfectly countered her arguments. It was like a sword fight where he anticipated her every move, parrying before she could even strike, relentlessly backing her into a corner. Less than halfway through the session, Leo was in complete control, the outcome of the case all but decided. They sound so perfectly rehearsed, I thought, watching from the back of the gallery. Like they're reading from a script. I sat there, listening intently to their performance, waiting for the one line I knew was coming. "Your Honor," I called out, raising my hand and interrupting their little play. As the original lead counsel for the plaintiff, I've noticed a problem. The data set the defense just presented is highly confidential. Even junior members of my client's company wouldn't have access to it. Yet the defense is citing it as if it were public knowledge, something they just happened to find. I slowly pulled the oxygen mask from my face. "Honey, what are you?" Sarah's face paled, and she rushed toward me. "Please, stay where you are." The man in the white coat blocked her path. Sarah tried to push past him, but it was like pushing against a mountain. "Sarah, we've been face to face so many times now. You really don't recognize me?" the doctor asked with a grin. Sarah looked up, bewildered. The doctor removed the surgical mask he always wore so carefully. Underneath was a man with a short beard and a world-weary face. It was my best friend, David Carter, Sarah's ex-boyfriend from college, the man whose career and life she had nearly destroyed. I stood up from the wheelchair. As the entire courtroom stared in shock, I walked to the counsel's table. "Your Honor, the data provided by the defense was obtained through corporate espionage. We wish to file a formal complaint," I announced, my eyes fixed on Sarah's terrified face. I continued, my voice like ice. "Furthermore, our own counsel, Ms. Sarah Jenkins, is suspected of accepting bribes, conspiracy, and malicious prosecution. She is an officer of the court who has knowingly broken the law." Sarah knew exactly what that meant. In a corporate case of this magnitude, the charges were serious, career-ending, life-destroying. She collapsed to the floor in a panic. No, I'll talk. I'll testify," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Leo and Chloe. "It was them. They made me do it." But Leo and Chloe were not ones to go down easily. "Your Honor," Leo said, his voice calm and steady. "This data was compiled from publicly available information online. As for whether this woman leaked it, or how it got out, I have no idea." He smiled, revealing a row of predatory white teeth. "You're lying," Sarah screamed. "You know you. The data appeared online 3 days ago," Leo cut in smoothly. "I merely cited it as evidence. What rules have I broken? What have I stolen?" He was a fast learner. He remembered the lesson I taught him with the two-document trick, and this time he was prepared. He had hired a hacker to leak the data Sarah gave him onto some obscure corner of the internet. It was a meaningless data dump that no one would ever notice, but gave him the perfect alibi. If accused of theft, he could claim he just found it. The kid was brilliant, I had to admit. A terrible lawyer, but a master of the dirty tricks. I walked over to Sarah. She looked up at me as if I were her savior. "Hey," I whispered in her ear, "if you don't fight back now, they're going to walk away clean, and you'll be the only one rotting in a jail cell." "I have evidence," she shrieked. Of course she did. This was the same woman who had expertly framed David Carter all those years ago. She was never one to be caught unprepared. Sarah scrambled to her feet, her hair a mess. I have proof of everything I've said. I want to press charges against Leo Vance for blackmail, bribery, organizing corporate espionage, and obstruction of justice. The trial descended into a circus, and I was just a guest star. With the story reaching its climax, my part was done. It was time for the main characters to take the stage. I had spent the last few months pretending to be a cripple to fool Sarah. As I walked out of the courtroom, my own legs felt unsteady, like they didn't quite belong to me. 17 on a sunny beach, David and I sat comfortably under a large umbrella. "I still can't believe you orchestrated this entire thing," David said, swirling the wine in his glass. I gave a wry smile. "Your old flame wasn't part of the original plan. She just happened to wander into the trap I set for Chloe and Leo. So I decided to just roll with it and settle an old score for you at the same time. It started 3 months ago, on my birthday. I had cleared my schedule and gone home early, hoping to spend a quiet evening with a woman I had been married to for 10 years. A nice, romantic night, just the two of us. When I opened the door, a sound from the bedroom shattered every hope I had. As a lawyer, I'd seen my share of sordid stories, but I never thought it would happen to me, to the woman I had loved so deeply. I sat on the living room couch for 5 minutes. If she comes out and begs for forgiveness, I thought, I'll forgive her. Maybe it's my fault for being so focused on work, for not giving her enough attention. I kept making excuses for her. Then I heard their voices from the bedroom. "Chloe, you have to help me," Leo was pleading. "This is my one shot to take down Ethan Hayes and make a name for myself. The partners at my firm promised me my own practice group if I win this case." "Of course, baby," Chloe's voice purred. "Anything for you. Let that bastard Ethan Hayes go to hell." I started to laugh. A hollow, painful sound. In that moment, a plan for revenge was born. "You want fame and fortune. I'll make sure you end up in disgrace. You want your sweet, little love story. I'll drag you both down to hell." I was going to take back every shred of dignity they had stolen from me. As for Sarah, I knew from a moment she bumped into me that it was no coincidence. Chloe and Leo were practically pushing her into my arms. But instead of exposing their clumsy scheme, I decided to play along. I had never forgotten what she did to David. As Sarah worked her way deeper into my life, I deliberately gave her access to my work at the firm, arranging with my partner for her to be involved in the very case they were targeting. From beginning to end, Sarah was nothing but a pawn, a messenger passing fake information between me and Leo. And now, I couldn't care less what happened to them. Let the dogs tear each other apart until there was nothing left. That was the whole plan. "But what about your health?" David started, his voice trailing off. "I've done everything I needed to do. The rest is up to fate." I drained my glass, the burn of the liquor making me wince. It was one of the few times in my life I'd ever had a strong drink. Only when you're about to die do you truly understand what it means to live, to experience more, to try new things. It felt good, really good. 3 months later, I walked out of the hospital. Because the cancer had been caught in its earliest stages, and I had one of the best surgeons in the country, I made a full recovery. The doctor called my case a 1-in-a-million miracle. 18, I was driving away from the hospital, calling David and my colleagues to plan a celebratory dinner, when my car jolted forward. I'd been rear-ended. I got out of the car and came face-to-face with the other driver. Chloe. Her eyes were vacant for a few seconds. Then she recognized me and rushed forward, throwing her arms around me. "Ethan, you're out of the hospital. You're okay," she cried. "Can we get back together? Please." "Leo's in jail. That son of a bitch. All his money was from loan sharks. I'm so cold at night, Ethan, my heat got turned off." Within 3 sentences, she was already back to her old manipulations. I suddenly laughed. Looking at this disheveled woman who looked 20 years older than she was, I wondered what kind of spell I had been under to nearly die for her. "I'll be good from now on. I promise," she pleaded. "I'll cook for you. I'll wait for you to come home. I'll take care of you." So she didn't know how. She had just been taking my love for granted, using it as an excuse to do whatever she wanted. But I felt no sympathy. The victory I was enjoying today had been paid for with 1,000 cuts to my soul. To feel sorry for her now would be a betrayal of the man I used to be. I smiled. "What a shame." Chloe looked at me, confused. "Look at you. I said, my voice laced with disdain. So poor, so common. How could a woman like you ever be my wife? Poor, common. Those were the words she used to despise most. Now, I was using them on her. It wasn't an insult. It was simply the truth. She looked like a beggar. Chloe, you have to keep being your old self. You know, spoiled, arrogant, I mocked. At least in front of me. Don't ruin the image of the goddess I have in my mind. Every word was a knife twist. Chloe shot me a venomous look and turned to leave. Wait, I called after her. She stopped, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He's just putting on a brave face, she was probably thinking. He still can't live without me. If you want me back, you're going to have to try a little harder than that, she said haughtily. I looked at her frumpy, pathetic figure and almost threw up. The money for the car repairs. I shouted, don't think you can just walk away from that. That was the last time I ever saw Chloe. I heard that she spent the next few years drowning in debt from the loan sharks, until one day, she walked into the ocean and never came back. Leo was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I have no idea what became of him after he got out. A few years later, I married David's younger sister. We have a son and a daughter now. I believe that good things come to those who wait. Sometimes life's greatest gifts are waiting for you, just on the other side of the storm.